All right, so in Bible prophecy, we talk about preterism, futurism, and historicism. So, right here, preterism and futurism, opposed to each other, but each accomplishing the same goal, namely that of diverting men's minds from perceiving the truths contained in God's prophetic word, especially with regard to the identity of the Antichrist. That is where preterists, futurists, and historicists will differ. The identity of the Antichrist is what makes futurism futurism, and what makes preterism preterism. That is one of the two main defining characteristics of preterism, futurism, and historicism is the identity of the Antichrist. The second issue, of course, is the utilization of the day equals year principle. This is imperative for the historicist perspective. But let's listen to what these folks have to say about historicism and the almost complete abandonment of historicism as a valid eschatological view, a valid view of the interpretation of the book of Revelation and the interpretation of the book of Daniel as well. Yet it's the only proper way to understand Bible prophecy, and it is Reformation theology and post-Reformation theology, as we're going to see in people like Jonathan Edwards and John Gill and many, many countless others. We have a great cloud of witnesses that were all historicists from the Reformation and post-Reformation time period. But this is what some modern evangelicals have to say about historicism. Let's listen.
This was held in the Middle Ages. This view, more than the preterist view, has been almost 100% abandoned. I don't know any credible person today, a single person, who holds this view today.
Okay, I don't know a single credible person who holds this view today. So perhaps I am incredible then, because I hold to it. Here's what Jonathan Edwards had to say. This is his volume 1, Works of Jonathan Edwards, volume 1. This is his History of Redemption series of sermons. And so part 4 here, let me see if I can, I'll just show the table of contents. Volume 1 all the way down to section 13 here, or right here, section 13. Open that up and then go down to period 3, open up period 3, and then I'm all the way down in part 4 to the Reformation. So notice what Edwards says here, the success of redemption from the rise of Antichrist to the Reformation. To the Reformation. So when did the Antichrist come to power? The man of sin, son of perdition in 2 Thessalonians, the little horn of Daniel chapter 7, the sea beast of Revelation 13, 1 through 10, the scarlet harlot of Revelation chapter 17. Those are all speaking of the same entity, not distinct, separate entities. The time when the reign of Antichrist began, it is certain that the 1260 days or years, there's the important issue. The 1260 days, the 42 months, the time times half a time, mentioned 7 times in Scripture, twice in Daniel, 5 times in the book of Revelation, literally symbolizes years. Years, 1260 years. Jonathan Edwards knew it. And then the time of Antichrist's reign did not commence. That is, that 1260 years did not commence before the year of Christ, 479 AD. That is, at the fall of the Roman Empire. Because Daniel chapter 7, I'm going to scroll all the way up here. Daniel chapter 7, what rough beasts and the Antichrist? Of course, the Antichrist is the little horn in Daniel chapter 7. Futurism teaches Antichrist will be a single solitary individual. Preterism teaches that Antichrist was a single solitary individual in the past, either Caesar Nero or that Antichrist was a series of pagan Roman emperors who persecuted the church. Both of these systems are false. Indeed, they are. In fact, it was the Jesuit Counter-Reformation who first systematized the preterist and the futurist schools of interpretation. Louis de Alcazar for the preterist view and Francisco Ribera, both Jesuits, promoting the futurist view, which dispensational futurists hold to today. Okay, people like Jack Hibbs and John MacArthur, unfortunately, has been promulgating dispensational futurist nonsense for over 50 years. So here are the four beasts that rise up out of the sea, and we're going to notice that these beasts are not individual human beings. The beasts that rise up out of the sea from Daniel 7 compare Revelation 13 verses 1 through 10. The sea beast, the Antichrist. The Antichrist is an empire, not a single solitary individual human being. Those four beasts in Daniel 7 represent the Babylonian Empire, followed by the Medo-Persian Empire, followed by the Grecian Empire, followed by the Roman Empire. And the 10 horns from Daniel 7 that sprung up out of the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century, latter part of the 5th century AD, 476, represent the lesser tribal vassal nations that made up the Roman Empire after its fall. So all four of these, the Roman, the Grecian, back to the Medo-Persian, back to the back, these were all what we would call suzerain kingdoms. Suzerain kingdoms. So a suzerain kingdom is a kingdom that has lesser vassal kingdoms under its purview, under its umbrella. That's why they're called empires and not just kingdoms. So empire, think of suzerain, a king of kings, or a kingdom of kingdoms, the most preeminent kingdom that has lesser vassal kingdoms. So suzerain and vassal. Okay? Each of these empires were the suzerain kingdom or empire for their respective times. And of course, the Roman Empire was the last of them, the 10 horns symbolizing these 10 tribal nations. 3 of these would be plucked up by the roots before the little horn could arise. So that's what Edwards means, that the 1260 years did not begin until after the year of Christ 470. He said 479, but I put 476 as the date because Jonathan Edwards is pointing towards the fall of the Roman Empire, and that Antichrist would not arise until after it. That is the point. Let's see. We got John Gill here in his commentary. The 10 horns out of this kingdom, that is the Roman Empire, are 10 kings that shall arise, says Scripture. Kings and kingdoms are used synonymously in Scripture. So that's why John Gill says in his commentary, or 10 kingdoms which sprung out of the Roman Empire, or into which it was broken and divided upon the dissolution of it in about AD 476. Just to demonstrate that I'm not just making all this up. This is historicism right here. He gives Mede's list, very similar to my own. He gives Sir Isaac Newton's list, very similar to my own. I don't include the Huns, of course, because the Huns were a nomadic people, not a kingdom people. But I can see why Sir Isaac Newton would include the Huns in his list of 10. Okay, before this little horn would arise, 3 of those first would be plucked up by the roots. The Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. And all 3 of these held to the Arian heresy. The Arian heresy in church history. It's a Christological heresy. Modern day Jehovah's Witnesses would hold they would hold to the Arian heresy from church history. But these were the 3 that were uprooted. Give a little history of how those 3 horns were uprooted. The Heruli were the first of the barbarian tribes to invade and subsequently rule over Rome. So in 476, and that's why we put the fall of the Roman Empire officially at 476 AD, is because of the Heruli invasion and the invasion by the Heruli king Odoacer. Rode into Rome, usurped the last of the Roman emperors there, Romulus Augustulus, who was about 16 years old. Odoacer was an Arian, okay? But he was tolerant toward the Catholics, and Catholic here meaning literally universal, but in this context we're talking about the fact that they were Trinitarians as opposed to Arians. Okay, but Odoacer was hated by the Italians. At the suggestion of the Eastern Emperor Zeno, the ruler of the Ostrogoths, Theodoric invaded Italy in 489 and secured the surrender of Odoacer in 493. So in 493, the first of the 3 horns was uprooted. Bishop of Rome, no change. The change from Heruli to the Ostrogothic ruler made no real significant change. Theodoric, Ostrogothic ruler, was also Arian, but was also very tolerant toward the Catholic Trinitarians. The Vandals, however, who had settled in northern Africa since their sacking of the city of Carthage in 439 AD, were violently opposed to the Trinitarian Catholics. Now, let's just look back in church history. Just about 100 years before this, in northern Africa, in Alexandria, specifically in Egypt, Look to the life of Athanasius. Okay, there were also Arians during his time, a century before this, before the Vandals sacked the city of Carthage. Okay, there were Arians there, and they were violently opposed to the Trinitarians. People like Athanasius had to flee for their lives because of their defense of the doctrine of the Trinity. So that was a century before the Vandals even sacked the city of Carthage. But anyway, the Vandals were Arian. They were violently opposed, non-tolerant. In order to assist the West, the new Eastern Emperor, now Justinian, sent his ablest general, Belisarius, to go up against the Vandals in northern Africa, and he vanquished them completely in 534 AD. So the second of the three horns came to its end at this time. Belisarius then turned his attention toward the Ostrogoths in Italy in 538. Justinian, from the east, also landed his eastern army to assist Belisarius in the overthrow of the Ostrogoths in Italy. The Ostrogoths abandoned Rome at this time, and this was the real end of Ostrogothic power in the west. Thus, the third of the three horns was uprooted in 538 AD. 538 AD, the Code of Justinian, very important, because this is when the little horn would arise, the papal power would arise, starting out small and rising to more and more power. So the Code of Justinian, there were two official letters from Justinian that were incorporated into the code, and these carried with them all the force of a royal edict. And one of them, Justinian legally and by royal decree declared the Bishop of Rome as the, quote, head of all the holy churches, and also, quote, head of all the holy priests of God. Though this legal recognition of the Bishop of Rome's ecclesiastical supremacy is dated to 533 AD, the imperial edict carried no force while the Arian Ostrogothic kingdom was still in power in Rome. Thus, it was only after 538 AD, when the Ostrogoths were kicked out with the defeat of the Ostrogoths, that the royal edict could actually take effect. Thus, the little horn had come to his seat and great authority. After this, the Bishop of Rome's power would only continue to grow. Indeed. So this is historicism. This is what Jonathan Edwards was talking about. Okay, this is what John Gill was talking about. The time when the reign of Antichrist began, it is certain that the 1260 years of Antichrist's reign did not commence before the year of Christ 479. Agreed. Okay, it was about 538 AD. All you have to do is add this 1260 years to 538 AD, and you know what you come up with? So 1260 years from 538 AD, here's what you come up with. Napoleon and the Catholic Church. Notice this. General Berthier, that is Napoleon's general, Louis-Alexandre Berthier, marched to Rome and entered it unopposed on 10th of February 1798, proclaimed a Roman Republic, and demanded the Pope Pius VI, renounce his temporal power. This was the deadly wound inflicted on the papal Antichrist at the end of the 1260 years. All right, and a wound that has been healing ever since, as Scripture has told us. This wound would not lead to the ultimate death and destruction of the Antichrist, but it would be a deadly wound that would be healed. So that is historicism. So I make this short and sweet. There's seven hills of Rome, Revelation chapter 17. All these kinds of things. Good stuff. Church in Rome. Ooh, I got to read that. George Edmondson. Anyway, so this is Jonathan Edwards. Let's see. Oh, man, see here. This is H. Grattan Guinness. Sir Isaac Newton expressed the view that only under the seventh trumpet, okay, talks about Newton several times throughout this work. A century before the French Revolution, Sir Isaac Newton anticipated that the prevalence of infidelity would, in all probability, be an instrument in the hand of God for the overthrow of the tyrannical supremacy of the Church of Rome. You know what? I'm the one who's surrounded by the great cloud of witnesses. These men are not. They're not listening to the great cloud of witnesses. They're not. Historicism, all but abandoned. I don't know one person who holds to this. It's just a ridiculous view, this historicism. Yeah, I stand with the authors of the Westminster and the 1689 Baptist Confessions of Faith. They were historicists. Those are historicist confessions of faith. They are not preterist. They are not futurist confessions of faith. You can't be a preterist or a futurist and hold to either one of those confessions, as I've said before. So, Sad thing that people will teach this about historicism. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. We'll talk to you soon. Soli Deo Gloria.